Hey everyone, my name is Usman and in this video I'll build a schema visualizer using React Flow, which is used by a lot of companies such as Supabase. So let's get into it. So here you can see I've got an example schema where I have a model post and that model has some fields and types. Then there is a comments field and an author field, and they have a schema type, not a simple type like a number or string. And then I have the respective comment and user scheme right here, which also have got some fields and their types. And this schema visualizer would basically show your schema in the form of nodes and edges. So there's a post schema and I have shown the fields and their types, and then for the user and comment types, since they have their own schemas, I have linked them using edges. And this can be a great tool for visualizing your entire database or whatever storage you have. And this is basically being used by companies like Supabase and a lot of other SaaS projects. So this is a pretty great tool to learn. So let's get into how we'll build this. Okay, so now we've got a clean slate. Let's start building this from the ground up. First, let me set up the basics for the React Flow components. First of all, I will give this wrapper div a background. So I'll say 1C, 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 and this would give a blackish background. Then inside the React Flow component, I will import the background component. I will give it a color of 222 and a variant of background variant dot lines. So basically this gives us the background for the React Flow component. Great. Now let's also show the controls component. So that is present here. Great. For the schema visualizer, I don't want to add any state because this would just be a visualizer component. I won't be able to do anything with it. It would just basically create the nodes and edges based on the schema I have. So I will just use the default edges and default node props. So I'll add default nodes equal to nodes. Default edges would be edges. Let me build the array. So I'll say nodes for now. This would be empty arrays, and then edges would be an empty array as well. Here I would also pass the fit view prop so that it fits the view to only the nodes that are present in the React Flow and it doesn't show any white space or anything. And then some fit view options. So I'll say padding should be 0.4. Great. So these are basically the props I'll use for the React Flow component. Now the schema I have for this particular example is in the form of string. Maybe in your implementation, whatever you are doing, maybe it's an array of objects or maybe some other structure. So you will do the necessary you want to do for that particular data structure. For string, if I want to extract something from a string, then I will use regex for it. So let's do that. One of the best websites for experimenting with regular expressions is regex 101. So you can add your test string here and then you can build your regular expression here, and basically it would show the matches if are happening, and then you can basically copy and paste this into your JavaScript code. Very intuitive way to use regular expressions. So let's copy this string. So I'll copy this and then I'll paste it here. So basically what I want is I want to match three groups. So based on the models, so I have a picture of what I will build. So I have three nodes, right? So basically for these three models, I want to have three nodes. We'll focus on the edges after that. But basically what I want is for every model that I have, I want to build an object where I have the name, which I would show here. Then I want to have a fields array, and that fields array would have two properties, name and type. So name would be in this case ID, then type would be number, then name would be title, type would be string, etc, etc. So basically that would be an array, and then I would map it here. So that is what I would want to extract from this. So basically I will write such a regular expression which would basically give me three groups, and then basically I will use further regular expressions to extract the necessary things I want from this model strings. So basically I will say model, then space, then /w plus, basically that would match any word character. I'll add a curly braces here. Then I'll basically build a dictionary or a collection of characters or character types that are present between this curly brace and this curly brace. So we can see that there are word characters. We can see that there are opening and closing braces, then semicolons, then colons, spaces, word boundaries, etc. So I'll basically add that. So for making a collection, I will add two square brackets, then a plus, and then here I'll add those characters. So I'll say W. So any word character can be present. Then S means spaces, so you can see that it has now matched this. Then colon, semicolon, then opening square bracket, closing square bracket, and you can see that matched everything from this opening parenthesis to this parenthesis. So now I'll add the closing parenthesis. So basically this regular expression would match these groups, and then basically I can loop through these groups and extract the necessary information. Cool. So I can use this regular expression to do that. Now here I will create a file. So I'll say Schema Visualizer.utils.ts. Great. Here I'll create a function. So get info from schema is equal to, I'll get the schema, and then I'll get models, and the type would be model. And basically this is the type of the model. As I said, I will have the name of the model and then the fields, and the fields would be an array which would have two types, name and type. Ignore this has connection is style property, I will come back to it later. For now let me return a array so that the error goes away. Now here I'll say const model strings is equal to, let me copy this regular expression. So I'll say schema dot match all. Let me add this. Let me wrap this result with array.from because I want to convert this result into an array. Let me console log it so that you can see what I get. So model strings, and I'll copy this function and I will import it here. So I'll say const models is equal to a, and I'll pass the schema from this file. Now if I refresh this, I get this. If I look at it, you can see that I get some results. So if I open the first item, then that gives me an array, and this array has some properties. So the first item is the string which is matched for each particular group. So model, post, etc. like this is the whole string. You can see when I hover over it, shows me that. Similarly for comment, similarly for user. So basically I want the first item from each item. So I'll just map. I'll come here, I'll say dot map item 0. So now I get only the strings. Cool. So basically now I want to extract the name from this string I will get. So let me remove this, and now I've only got this. So in order to get the name, I'll say model, then space, then W plus. So basically this W plus is the name of the model. So I'll wrap it with a curly brace. So basically when I will match this particular regular expression, because I've wrapped the name portion with the curly braces, I can extract this name portion. So let's add that. So I'll say const model names is equal to model strings dot map model string. Then here I would return array dot from model string dot match. Let me copy that regular expression. I'll put it here, and then let me convert it to match all, and then I'll get the first item just like I did for this case. So let's console log model names and see what I get. So for model names I get an array. So I want the name, so I basically want to get the second item from the array. So here I'll say first. So now I only get the names. Cool. Now basically I want to get the models from this. So I'll say const parsed models is equal to model strings dot map model string, then return name. Let me give it a type of model so that I get completion and everything. So name would be model names index. Let me extract the index from here. Then fields. So for fields I will build another regular expression. So here for the fields you can see that there is a pattern there are word characters, then a colon, then space, and then some other word characters. So I can say W plus colon W plus. So basically it matches everything. So basically I will wrap them with capturing groups, and now I will be able to get the field names and types. Cool. So here I'll say array.from model string dot match all. Let me add the regular expression here, then map, then that would give us the field. So here I would return an object. So name would be field 1 and the type would be field 2, because now there are two capturing groups. Previously we just used the second item, but now because there are two capturing groups, I'm using the second and third items. So I will just say name and type. So these are the models. I can just return them here. So now I'll basically use these models to build the nodes. So I'll say models.map model return data would be the model. Then here position would be, let's say, x0 y0. I'll come back to the position later. And ID would be the model.name. Great. Now you can see that 3 nodes are being rendered, which is cool, but basically I want to make custom components for them, just like I showed in this picture. So let's build that component. So here I will say model node.tsx. This model component would get node props and the data would have the type of model. Here I will get the data. I will use Chakra UI to build the component. You can use any library you want. So box from Chakra UI, then let me give it a border radius of 8 pixel and a min width of 250 pixel. Then for displaying the name, I'll say box p is equal to 1. So some padding, then text align should be center. Then a border radius on the top left and right. So I'll say 8 pixel 0 0, and then a purplish background. Here inside this box I will use the text component from Chakra UI. I'll say font weight should be bold, color should be white, and here I'll display the name of the model. So in order to add the custom component, I will add the model type. So I'll go to the Schema Visualizer component. Here I'll say const model types is equal to model and then model node, and then here I will add the type. So I'll say type should be model, and here I would add the model types. So I'll say node types should be model types. Now you can see that I'm rendering the nodes here, which is great. Now let's add the remaining stuff for the fields. So here I'll say data.fields.map. I'll get some stuff here. So I'll import flex from Chakra UI React. Here I would get type and name. Inside this flex I will have text. Then inside this text I will use the pre tag to give it a coded look, and here I'll say name. Same case here, I'll say this should be the type, and here I'll say justify content space between. Let me give it a little padding. Color should be white. Then I want to give the odd rows some different color and even rows some different colors. So I'll say even the background should be this, and let me copy this. For odd, the background should be this. Cool. Let me use the pre tag here as well so that it has a coding look. So now if I refresh, you can see that all the nodes are present here and basically extracted all the nodes related information from the string schema. Great. Now there is one issue. Right now I am not giving them any specific location, and basically I'm just rendering them on x0 y0, but that is not what we want. So basically the idea is that I would basically make a layout for these nodes based on the number of nodes in a grid kind of format. So I will basically use a 2x2 grid or a 3x3 grid or 4x4 grid depending on how many nodes or models I have. So right now I've got 3 models. So 3 models can fit in a 2x2 grid. So I don't need to make a 3x3 grid. So basically I will write such a logic which would basically render them in the form of a table based on the number of nodes. So in this case there are 3 nodes. So 3 nodes can be laid out in a 2x2 grid which has space for 4 items. So basically that is what I'll use, and you'll understand what I will do in just a minute. So here I'll say let row is equal to 0, let column is equal to 0, then const num models is equal to models dot length, then let num grid is equal to 1. So right now I'm saying that I only need to render one node, but basically I'll test it based on number of models I have. So I'll say while 1, so basically an infinite loop, if num grid squared is greater than equal to number of models, then I want to break from the loop. Otherwise I want to increment num grid. So basically what would happen is in the first loop num grid is 1. For this particular case the number of models is 3. So num grid squared 1 squared is 1 is greater than equal to number of models 3? No. So it would basically increment it. In the next iteration 2 squared 4 is greater than equal to 3. So basically it would break. So basically the number of grid is 2. So now basically that means that I have to render a 2x2 grid and basically lay out these nodes on that grid. So let's do that now. So here I'll calculate the x and y. So I'll say const x is equal to row multiplied by 300. Then let me copy this. I'll say const y should be equal to column multiplied by 300. If num grid index, let me get the index. If num grid modulus index is equal to 0, then I want to set the column to 0 and then I want to increment the row. Otherwise I just want to increment the column. So basically what I'm doing is, in this particular case there is a 2x2 grid, right? So for the first node it would be rendered somewhere here with x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 0. Then basically I will increment the column. So now y would be 300, x would still be 0. So basically the second node would be rendered somewhere here. Then basically number grid 2 modulus 2 would be equal to 0. So then column would become 0, but now the row would be incremented. So now the next node would go here and then next node would go here, etc. So basically I'm rendering the stuff on a 2x2 grid. Similarly for a 3x3 grid, first node would be rendered here, then here, then here, and then here, etc. So I'll just remove this x and y dummy values. Now you can see that it is rendered on a 2x2 grid. Similarly, I will show you another schema example where I have 5 models and you will see that it would be rendered on 3x3 grid, and this logic is dynamic. It's not, just for this particular case. Now I want to make connections. So basically author has the user type, comments has the comment type. I basically want to link them so that, I can know which particular schemas are linked to which fields in the schema, etc. So let's do that. So here I'll say I will also return connections, which would be of the type model connection, and basically using the connections I will build the edges. So let me return a dummy array for now. Here I'll say const connections model connection is equal to an empty array for now. Here I'll say parsed models dot for each model. Then I will also iterate over the fields. So basically the logic is simple. If there is a model and that model has a field whose type is equal to the name of some other model, then I need to make a connection. So I'll say const connection is equal to model names find model name field type includes model name. So that is what a connection would be. If there is a connection, then I want to say connections dot push. Target would be connection, source would be the model dot name, and name would be the field dot name. So basically using this information, I will build the edge between the field and the schema. Now let me return the connections as well. Here inside the schema visualizer, I will get the connections from here. Then here I'll say connections.map connection return. I'll create an ID for the edge based on the field name and the model. So I'll say connection dot source and then connection dot name. Here I'll say ID should be source ID, then source should be connection dot source, target should be connection dot target, then it should be animated. Also two additional properties, not just source and target, source handle and target handle, because if there is a schema which has multiple types, like in this case this schema has two types, so I need basically two handles for those two connections, and they would have the same type. So they would have the source type and they would have the target type. So basically because of that I will have to pass a source handle as well, because these two source handles will have different IDs. So I'll say source handle would be the source ID. The target handle would be, however, just the target, because the target handle would be only one. I will have a target handle here at the top, and this would be one per model. So we can just have it, you know, like the target handle for this can be user and the target handle for this can be comment. There can be multiple target handles. Now I've added the edges array, but obviously there are no handles right now. So let's add the handles. So here in the model node, I will come here and I will import the handle component from React flow. Its position would be position dot top. Let me import the position from React flow, and its type would be target, and its ID would be data.name, so the model name. Here also display a handle per field. So here I'll say handle, the handle's position would be position dot right, its ID would be same as the ID I gave for the edges, so the model name and then the field name. So data dot name and then here the name of the field which is coming here, and the type would be source. Now if I refresh, you can see that the edges are present here, but I'm rendering two handles, but these two handles are basically overlapping on top of each other. So I basically need to add some styles so that they appear with the field. So I'll say style top, because these are absolutely positioned. So I'll use the top property to basically display them where I want. So I'll get the index from here, and then I'll say 32 plus 16 plus 32 into index. And the reason why I've said this is, no, this should be 32, and you can see that now it works. And the reason why it works is the height of this header is 32, then the height of these fields are 32 as well. So the middle of that would be 16. So 32 plus 16, this is where it would be. And then I'm adding the multiple of 32 plus index. So in this case, index is 0, so it would be at 48 pixel. Then for the next case, it would be, you know, plus 32, then plus 32, plus 32, plus 32. So basically a handle would be rendered in front of each field. Now one logic is remaining, last thing. I only need to show the handle for cases where I want to show the edges. So basically for these simple types, obviously there is no schema. I don't want to make an edge, so I don't want to show these handles. Similarly for this case as well, this post hasn't got any connection, so I don't want to show the handle for this. So basically I will add some logic for the models and basically use that logic to conditionally render these handles. So let's add that logic. So in the types you can see that I have two additional properties. For fields I have has connections, and for the model I have is style property. So basically I will use these two properties to show these handles. So back here I will say has connections. A model would have connections if the type of any field is included in the model names. So if the type of any field is actually the name of some other schema, then that particular field has got connections, and then it should be displayed, otherwise not. So I'll just say find model name type includes model name. Similarly, I've added some logic for the style property. So basically, if there is a model which is present as a type in a field of some other model, then that model is a child, otherwise the other model is not a child. For example, in the case of this post model is not present as a type for a field in some other schema or model, so that means that that model is not a child of some other model. However, comment and user are. So only for comment and users will I display the handle which is present on top of the model, otherwise not. So I'll go to the model node component and I'll say here, let me extract has connections from here. So has connections, if it has got connections, then show it. Similarly, if the model is a child, then show it, otherwise no need to. Now if I go here, you can see that the handle for this post model on the top disappears, also the handle for every other field disappears. It only remains for the fields which have got a connection. So that is it for the video. Hopefully you learned a ton. This schema visualizer is being used by many SaaS applications, and this can be a great tool if you have a service which is basically providing a user some database and you want to show the user their database schema or something. So that is it for the video. I will greatly appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel and like the video and share it, because that is what motivates me to keep making more videos. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.